So everyone, now that the Magia record anime is over, let's do a little, really quick, and I mean really quick, recap of the entire anime and basically ask the question, is it actually worth watching, especially if you haven't actually played the game? So as someone who has played the game myself, it is, well, let's just say the anime has some divisive quality to it. There are some parts that I was absolutely ecstatic to see. I was so happy to see all of these cool things that happened, but at the same time, there were also a bunch of things that were rather disappointing. Now, just to very quickly go over what I mean with either of those, it's just that, well, on one hand, there are many things you can visually do that you of course cannot do in a medium where, for the most part, you're just reading text of two characters talking to each other. So of course you won't be able to actually see any of the fights really happening. You won't get any sort of visual feedback on anything that's going on. You just have to sort of imagine characters doing something when they say they're doing something. But above and beyond even that, like this is something that of course was going to happen in anime. Anime is a visual medium, of course we're going to see stuff. But we went even beyond that. And we added stuff to the story, or not just to the story, but to the experience of experiencing Magia Record that they didn't need to add, but did anyway because they wanted to. Now, I'm pretty certain that most of the stuff that was added was on the direction of Ino Curry, or Doro Ino to be more exact, who is the main director behind the Magia Record anime. And as I mentioned in another video, Doro Ino probably hates Magia Records, the game, to some degree. Like, there are a bunch of hints here and there that he does have a strained relation to the actual game itself, maybe from a gameplay, but even more so from a story standpoint, because he's not actually involved with the story of the game at all. But here's the thing. Doro Ino really fucking loves Madoka as a whole, and even more so, he loves visual storytelling. He loves to put in really cool visual sort of, not just allegories and metaphors and symbolisms. He lives for that sort of stuff. And if, in case you never heard about Inokuri before, Inokuri is the animation troupe that basically made sure that all of the different witch labyrinths, all these witchscapes, they all look as crazy as they do because they did the design for the witch labyrinth and for the witches themselves. They were the designers behind all of that. So they really love this kind of stuff. And it kind of showed that Doro Ino put a lot of that into Magia Record as well. So from a stylistic standpoint, a lot of the fights, at least from the visuals that you get, look really cool. It's just that, and we're gonna get into some negatives with the fights. The fights sadly are, I don't want to say underwhelming, it's just that it's really hard sometimes to keep up with what is actually going on. Like, you can look at some individual frames of the fights, and it looks really cool. Like, for example, Alina doing her doppel and stuff, that actually looks really cool, like visually really impressive. It's just that when it's all in motion, it goes by so fast that you have really no idea what is actually happening, which is kind of a shame. This also gets compounded with some of the other, especially when characters are in a background, they tend to not get drawn that well, and they end up having Madoka faces. They don't really look too well. Some of the animations are a little bit stiff here and there as well, especially towards the later parts. But to bring it back to the original point, Inokuri really loves to put in this extra care into some of the stuff that you wouldn't have expected otherwise. And specifically, what I mean with that is, usually when you watch the anime and you have knowledge about the game story, or just in general are looking very closely at everything that you can see, you will very often find in the background or on the side, or sometimes even in the foreground, you will often find some clues, some hints, some callbacks to stuff, but also some foreshadowing to stuff that's going to happen later. Many different things that you're not going to be able to pick up on if you've just watched the anime, unless you pay really close attention and try to really like engage with the anime, maybe even talk to some other people about it as well. There's a lot of really nice hidden stuff that I think was all basically on the direction of Inokuri, making sure that you have all of this richness in the details as well. So from a visual detail standpoint of stuff, of just being able to find stuff, especially on repeat viewings, if you just look around, especially if you have game knowledge and apply game knowledge. There were a ton of cameos from other characters that weren't actually specifically shown. Like, sometimes you see other characters in the background or in some very quick cutaway scene. That even if you're just an anime viewer, you can see, oh, there's another character that I've never seen before and I'm never going to see again for the rest of the anime. But even so, there were a whole bunch of other hints towards other characters that we actually don't ever get to see or really understand in the anime by just watching the anime. But from a standpoint of having game knowledge, that's actually really cool. There's some really sweet hints in there. For example, one of the both of the radio call-ins that happen in what I forgot which episode it was. They were like radio call-ins, and both of these were actually from other characters from other Puella Magi that we don't actually ever get to see. But that's a really cool thing that they put in them, even if they can't show them, at least they put them in a reference like that through these radio calls. That's really cool, and a whole bunch of other stuff like that as well. I'm not going to go into all of this, but just in general, as I wanted to mention, it does try to put its own spin, at least on the visual details. But going even further, it also puts its own little spin on a lot of the story aspects. So if you then go away from the visuals, which, like I said, details cool, sometimes animation a bit stiff, especially in the background, gets a bit irky, a bit up and down. But with the story, the thing that was usually on people's minds when they came from the game is, if you've played the game before and you played the game story, what you will see is that the first half of the story was an alright setup for something that could have been good, and then the second half is just shit. And sadly, we actually got our first taste of the second half, because I think the last like 2 or 3 episodes were basically where people would say the second half begins. That's basically what the last 2 or 3 episodes were about. And a lot of people wanted the anime to do something different. Now, because a lot of people don't really like the direction of the second half of Magia Record that we're going to get in the second season, which is confirmed by now, a lot of people wanted something different. We wanted to see completely anime original direction for the story to go in. But now that we've seen the last few episodes of Season 1, we know that it's basically going into the same direction that the game does. And a lot of people, me included, were very disappointed by that. Although me personally, not that much actually, because I kind of already guessed that it was going to go in that direction. And this is kind of the big problem that I have with this anime, especially coming from the game, is that it is quite obvious that Inukuri wanted to do more, especially with the story stuff. If you look at all these different episodes, and I've done for all these episodes, I've done the videos of differences and spoilers where I look at the game, what the game did, and then I look at what the anime did, and I compare the two. I compare game versus anime for every single episode, which is why the videos are that long, because there's quite a lot of stuff to talk about. And I noticed that the anime in general was just pretty much better on a lot of cases. For example, the anime has a logical through line. That's probably the most important thing to note about the anime, in that in the anime you can very clearly see one action leads into another action, which leads into another action, which leads into another action, and so on. It's like a chain of events that all logically make sense from one to the next, while in the game stuff just randomly fell out of the sky. Characters would just not have any idea what to do, and then go, oh boy, I wonder what's going to happen next. And then randomly another character is going to like give them a phone call or walk into the screen and go, hey, I'm a new character and I have exactly what you need in order to continue the story. Or they run into a new problem that suddenly appears. Like they try to do something and they suddenly realize, oh my god, there's a problem. How have we not realized that we have a problem with this? How do we solve this problem? And they sort of just stand there for like a minute, and then suddenly the solution to the problem just sort of randomly appears. Like, oh, it's just right there. It just appeared. Wow. So in the game is completely an absolute mess on that front, that it just random stuff all the time, and it's really not actually that nice to read if you're actually paying attention to that. Of course, if you're not paying attention to that, you won't notice a lot of that. But if you actually do notice, trying to very closely look at the chain of events that happen in the game, it's just a big toss-up with random stuff. It's completely random. But like I said, in the anime, it actually is a logical through line of events, and that's probably the best thing that the anime did. Now, even further than that, what did the anime also do? The anime made sure that it cut out unnecessary distractions, unnecessary side plots, scenes that we didn't need to do. So it's like the second good part that the anime did. If you look at the game, there are a lot of scenes that end up just not going anywhere or that just have no place at all. Like in the game, there was at some point, like this is something that was completely pointless, where when they tried to figure out how to enter Solitude during the Sana arc, in the game there's like some website they need to find, and they have like this entire adventure trying to find the website, and then they find the website but they need a password for it. Randomly they just need a password that they didn't know about, so random problem. Then randomly someone calls them with the password. We go on about that, then they read the website. On the website they find more information that they already kind of knew about, like it's actually not really new information. And it's a whole back and forth over quite big parts of that first part of the chapter that we could have just completely cut and it wouldn't have changed anything, which is exactly what the anime did. It cut out this website stuff and all of that with the password and all of that weird stuff completely out, and no one even noticed it was missing because it was completely fucking pointless. And the anime did this in a lot of places where it looked at all of these different story arcs that you had, like every single chapter in the game, which in the anime was adapted in somewhere between 2 or 3 episodes each. And in each of those chapters, it just cut out so much unnecessary stuff that we really didn't need to do. In the game, the characters bounce around between many different locations, engaging in really weird side plots that end up not going anywhere, and the anime made sure that there's actually a lot less fat to everything that we really don't need at all. More muscle, less fat. That's basically what the anime did. So that's like the main 2 points that I would say the anime did greatly. You can add as a third point like the visual details that I mentioned, and I think just based on that, I would recommend the anime to people, even if you haven't played the game, even if you haven't seen Madoka Magica before. I would still recommend this to people. But I would also say that there are also some points that I really didn't like. So as I also mentioned already as one of the bad points, the animation quality, especially for stuff in the background, gets really wonky and kind of distractingly bad sometimes. And the second bad part is the second half, which I'm not going to talk too much about because of the story, because it's going to be in the second season. It's just that we didn't get the big story change that we wanted. I'm going to dedicate a bit more time to that later. But for now, the third bad point that I wanted to mention is that, of course, the game had a lot more content to it. I did mention that a whole bunch of stuff was cut, but aside from just the pointless stuff that was cut, even if you remove the stuff that we really didn't need to know about at all, there's still just so much content in Magia Record that with 26 episodes, if we are getting the 26 episodes, like we don't know how many episodes season 2 is gonna have, but if it's also 13 episodes, it would be 26 episodes. And even with 26 episodes, with this much content, this many different story arcs, this many characters, you also need to go do the overarching story arc during all of the smaller story arcs, all of the character developments that happen in there. There's new characters being introduced all the time, and there's just so much stuff to it. 26 episodes, not enough. Just absolutely not enough. You can do whatever you want with these 26 episodes. You're not going to be able to fit all of that. Even once you already cut out the pointless stuff, even then you're not going to be able to fit all that into 26 episodes. This does sadly mean that there are some parts of this anime that don't really give enough space to certain like story arcs or characters that desperately need it. They do in some places say, okay, we're going to dedicate a whole bunch of time specifically for this character so that at least this character works. Like, for example, they put a lot of effort into Sana and making sure that her backstory is being explained over multiple episodes, which was a lot shorter in the game actually. Same with Felicia. Felicia's stuff part was also a lot shorter in the game, but given a lot more focus in the anime, because they know, well, we can't give really enough focus to everything. Let's at least make sure that we give enough focus to the key points. So they make sure that Felicia and Sana, for example, are given a lot more focus than they did in the game, but sadly, a lot of other stuff because of that falls on the wayside. For example, Alina's character introduction is something that a lot of people will cite as being just terrible. It's, my opinion, still better in the game, because in the game she also just came out of nowhere and started fighting, and it was also kind of awkward, and then she just runs away. Like on herself, she just goes, I fought you guys and now I'm going to run away, and she runs away. It's awkward as fuck. Anyway, But for example, on not just Aina, but also other antagonists that we might want to know more about, we don't really get to know that much about them at all. Some of the story arcs focusing on the rumors might have some other side characters that fall to the wayside and we don't get too much about. This is, like I said, this is all just stuff that I will say is bad, but it's hard to actually fault the team behind the anime for this, because you just, like I said, you're just not going to be able to fit all that in the 26 episodes. So instead, what you have to look at is the stuff that they did put focus on, was that at least good? And I think, yeah, but the stuff they did put focus on was at least pretty good. Like, for example, the focus on Felicia and Sana was really good in my opinion. There's a lot of backstory to Sana that they added to the anime, which I think was done really nicely. So on that aspect, I think they did well, but like, it's still something that I have to chalk up as a negative. Like, not all negatives are something that is really a fault of anyone other than whoever decided it has to be 26 episodes and not 52, but it's not ever going to be 52. You're not going to be able to do that. But yeah, so it's not their fault specifically, but it's still bad, and you can't change that. That's kind of the point about that. So the one thing that I wanted to leave off with, though, like I said, I already say I would still recommend this, despite everything, to people, even if you haven't watched the Madoka Magica anime, but I'm not going to say it's anything super amazing. It's not anywhere near the original Madoka Magica anime at all, but it's still good anime. It's still an anime that you can watch and be like, oh yeah, that was pretty good, and then move on to another anime and not think too much about it, and then go, oh yeah, maybe season 2 is gonna come. I'm gonna watch that. It's gonna be okay. So not too many strong feelings about this, but I will say on one thing that I wanted to mention towards the end, the story part. So I did say that, yeah, second part people didn't like that too much, but Curry did make some changes, did shift some scenes around it, added some detail, they added some focus to characters otherwise didn't get it. They did make many changes. Almost the entirety of episode 1, actually the entirety of episode 1 is anime original. Anime original, complete episode anime original that they didn't have to do. They even have multiple anime original characters in episode 1 that were never anywhere in the game, not even mentioned. So this is actually a pretty big deal. We can see that Inu Curry, or Doro Inu to be more precise, really wants to put his own spin on Magia Record, because like I also mentioned before, Doro Inu probably doesn't like the game, especially the game's story, too much, and I think he wanted to like change it into something that could be good, or at least a lot better than the game, which I mean isn't too much it's not that hard to make something that's better than the game story, but even so, he really wanted to make it good, or he wanted to make it great again, basically. But we also see, especially with the last few episodes and seeing the direction where it's gonna go, what I think is the case is that the higher-ups basically told him, okay, you can direct the anime, you can make some changes, but you need to make sure the core parts of the story still line up with the game, because, and this is the important part, if people watch the anime and then play the game, and then the game is completely different, people are gonna be mad, especially if people skip through the first arc, which is what this is. Like, the 26 episodes we're seeing in the anime is basically the first big arc. Especially if they go really fast through that, don't really read too much, because they say to themselves, well, I've already seen the anime, so I don't need to play the story again in the game. I can just skip straight ahead to arc 2, which we're probably never gonna see animated, because they would need to have like season 3 and then season 4. They're not gonna do that. Anyway, so they would jump straight into arc 2 and skip past arc 1, and then in arc 2 they would notice, wait a second, all of the stuff that these guys are talking about, I haven't seen that? Like, they're talking about all of these plot points about stuff that happened in the past, and I've not seen anything like that at all, anywhere. If the anime kills off a character that appears in arc 2, they can't do that. They can't kill any character that appears in arc 2, so it's really, really awkward, because I'm almost 100% certain this is a directive that Inukuri has to work under, in that he can't basically destroy the game story. He still has to stick to certain core aspects. He can change the dressing, he can change the costume that the main story is wearing, but I don't think he can change the main story itself as a whole, which means that a lot of the stuff that a lot of the people who played the game really hated about the story we're going to see that. We're still going to see that. And it sucks because we had the opportunity to change it. But like I said, realistically, it was never going to happen. Like realistically, it was just going to follow the game's story, which is sad. It still disappoints me and still makes me sad, but I also know that it probably wasn't going to happen anyway. So, yeah, I don't mind it too much, to be honest, because like I said, we all knew it was going to be like this. That said, overall, it was pretty good. It's pretty good. The music in some parts, I haven't talked about the music. I usually don't talk about music during anime reviews, but yeah, the music was pretty alright, especially in I think the first episode toward the end when you see the Magia migration. Like, that's some really good music right there. And there was, I think, the regular combat music is also quite alright. There were a handful others that I thought were pretty good. Overall, nothing too amazing. It doesn't get anywhere close to Yuki Kajura's score in the original Magia, but still, overall, you know, it's quite alright. So to bring it to a point, this entire anime is pretty good, pretty good. Give it a watch and check it out. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys next time. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button.